welcome to part 2 of 3 of our show tonight. Yeah. Hi, my name is Mike Murdoch. I'm the artistic director of Alchemy Theatre. Thank you all so much for being here. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this New Works Festival. We brought her in from Utah with the help from a grant from the West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History. We're very lucky to have her. Here at Alchemy, we have produced 2 of her plays. One, Cheerleaders vs. Aliens this past year, and The Book Women the year before that. Rachel Bublitz is an award-winning and internationally produced playwright known for telling stories about women and creating exciting new work for young performers. She received the prestigious Will Glickman Award for the Best Premiere Play in the San Francisco Bay Area for her full-length play Ripped. In 2015, she was recognized as the top emerging female playwright in the Bay Area, receiving the June Ann Baker Prize. Her work has been produced at theaters and schools across the country, as well as Canada and England. Rachel developed her full-length environmental thriller Burst at the Pasadena Playhouse for the Mach 33 Festival of New Science Drive Plays in partnership with Caltech. Burst has received development with Keegan Theater, Theater 33, the Ground and Field Theater Festival, as well as many others. It was a semifinalist for the 2019 Bay Area Playwrights Festival. Now living in Salt Lake, Rachel found a wealth of new theaters and artists to collaborate with. In Salt Lake, she's received multiple readings with Salt Lake Acting Company and the Plan B Lab. In Park City, Rachel's had 3 commissioned works from the Egyptian U Theater, including Cheerleaders vs. Aliens, a sci-fi comedy directed by Alicia Washington, the world premiere in 2018. The Night Witches, directed by Alexandra Harbold, world premiere in 2019 at the Great Salt Lake Fringe Festival, to a sold-out run and a remount planned in the spring, which probably already happened at this point, because this was in 2020. And The Summer I Howled, a horror comedy, which had its world premiere in October of 2020. Rachel's had the pleasure of working in Ogden at the Good Company Theater with the Utah premiere of Ripped took place. Plan B Theater has toured Rachel's play presenting Super Cat and Reptile Robot and the Terrible Tickle Trouble for their 2019-2020 elementary school tour. And in Cedar City at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, Rachel had the pleasure of having the first public reading of Burst. Rachel has taught acting and other theater courses at Weber State University. She was a fellow for the 2015 Blacklist Screenplay Lab in San Francisco and served as the Bay Area Youth Ambassador for the Dramatists Guild for 2 years. She has plays published with Pioneer Drama Service, Eldridge Plays and Musicals, and Playground Publishing. She is a member of the Dramatists Guild of America. When she isn't writing, she's chasing after her 2 Viking-like children. I am pleased to introduce, and Alchemy is so glad to have her here, Rachel Bublitz.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. How did I end up here at Alchemy? 2 years ago, I saw a really cool poster for The Book Women, and I have my plays done all over, and you know, a lot of the posters are great, and some are like really special, and this was a special one, and so it kind of stuck in my head. Fast forward about a year later, I see Alchemy is doing Cheerleaders vs. Aliens. I think to myself, this has to be a different Alchemy Theater. There's no way the same theater would put me, like a relatively unknown playwright, in back-to-back seasons. That doesn't really happen unless you're Lauren Gunderson or William Shakespeare. And as I am neither, I figured this has to be a different theater. I look it up, it's the same theater. I could not believe it. And not only is it the same theater, it's the same director, which was just so exciting. I went on to Alchemy's website. I couldn't find your email, Cindy, actually, on there. So I ended up emailing Nora and said, hello, I'm Rachel Bublitz. It seems that you like me. Would you like to meet me more? Because I already like you. And then I offered to send, since I think the bio that you got was from my website, which I haven't updated in a long time. My husband's a computer programmer, and so he makes me program my own website. And I don't remember how to change my bio. So I have had a few more publications since then. And so I sent all the other published things that I have for youth theater to Nora. And we started talking more, and I said, hey, you know, I like to travel around the country. Would you like to have me out? Like, I would love to do a commission. What can we do? And she said, well, I can try to apply for a grant, and then she got the grant, which is incredible. And she said, do you have this weekend available? Which it's like my only free January weekend, also incredible. And so here I am. Weather, good job. Because we decided, we made the plans mid-December, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to West Virginia. What's the weather like? And I look towards the end of December, and I'm like, 60 degrees? That's going to be great. Because it's 20 degrees in Utah right now. I'm so excited to walk around in not freezing weather. And then I look the weekend before I come, and I'm like, un momento, por favor. Hold on. What are we doing? Because now it is significantly colder. But at least I understand snow now. I grew up in San Diego, California. And had I not lived in Salt Lake, this would have been a very different experience for me, because the first time I experienced snow was not my finest hour in any way. So that's how I ended up here. How did I end up writing plays? I started as an actor. So when I was very young, the first thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a rock climber. Then I figured out I was afraid of heights, so I didn't become a rock climber. The second thing was I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Then I wanted to be a writer. Then I wanted to be an actor for a very long time. So all of my things were like money-making machines, obviously. I had economics in mind when I was planning my life as a young person. But no, so I wanted to be an actor. In high school, I acted in every play. After I was a freshman, I directed and acted in all of the plays. I went on to get my bachelor's degree in performance. I directed a lot. That was what I was gonna do. I was gonna go off in the world and be an actor, mostly for stage, but if they had to have me in movies, I figured, I guess I would let them. But the wrinkle happened when I was graduating from the San Francisco State University with my performance degree. I was pregnant with my first child. And so I was done. I had my first baby. Her name's Audrey. She's great. And in the Bay Area where my husband and I were living, it's about, at the time in 2008, it was $25 an hour to get a babysitter. And I don't know if you know about acting, but they don't pay you $25 an hour to act in a play, even if it's Berkeley Rep. So I couldn't do I couldn't act at the time. My husband is not Mormon, but he did grow up in Salt Lake, and so he was always jealous of all of his friends who had 5 or plus siblings. He only had one brother, so when we first got married, he's like, a lot of kids, and I was like, yeah, so many kids. So we had our first baby, then we had their second baby pretty close. They're just under 2 years apart. Still not acting, still not directing, still not really involved in theater, me. After the second baby, I look at my husband and I'm like, okay, are we ready for baby number 3? We're doing this, right? And he's like, hold on, what if we waited 2 years and we just put a pin in that and see how we felt in 2 years? And it turned out after 2 years, I was able to read a book for the first time, which was pretty good. I mean, I've been reading a lot of Dr. Seuss, so I've been reading some books. But nothing I read Pride and Prejudice again, and it was wow, that's a book. This is so good. And then I just started reading. I went on a binge and just started reading all these classics. One of my dear friends worked at the box office at Berkeley Rep, and she got me in to go see Arabian Nights, Mary Zimmerman's adaptation of Arabian Nights. And I went and saw it, and I just came home, and I just could not stop crying. It was such a beautiful production. It was so well done. And I miss theater so bad. It was like an ache in my heart. Something I think that happens, something that happened to me is, you know exactly who you are. You're in your early 20s, but you really don't know anything. And then I decided to have kids right away. And then it's who am I? Am I a mother? Am I this? What is it? What is life? What is my purpose? And I had the mother thing down. I knew snacks were important, the park was important, showering them most of the time was important. But I had to figure out how can I also involve theater, because that's the other half of my life, and that's just as important. And so still, now I have 2 kids, so babysitting is no longer $25 an hour. It is significantly more expensive because you have 2, so it's probably like 30 to 35. Same problem as before, but I was like, okay, is there a theater thing that I can do at home? And playwriting is mostly done at home. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a play. This is not gonna be hard at all. This is gonna be great. It was very hard. I was wrong. I was super, super wrong. But it was also more rewarding than acting had ever been, or directing. Like when I first started acting, I loved it. I was obsessed with acting. Like I was one of those obnoxious actors who would write a bio for every character they ever played. I was the actor who not only memorized my lines, I memorized the whole play. So especially this happened more in high school than college, but like if somebody didn't know what they were doing and I'm like, okay, no, I got us all. I got this whole thing. I'm gonna give you your line. It's not a big deal. We're gonna get through it. And then in college, I started directing more, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more exciting than acting. It was just like this, like, I have more control and there's more going on, and I get to like decide what it means, not just like concentrate on one aspect of the play. And then writing it was like even more. Like every time, I don't get nervous on stage or acting. I got pretty nervous when I was director because I'd have to sit in the back and be like, I don't know what they're gonna do. What if everyone forgets? What if the lights go out? You know, all the what ifs. And then the writer is like even more removed, and it's even more nerve-wracking. It's like you sit in the back and you're, like I said earlier, you're just waiting for that first laugh through the audience to know that like, okay, we're on this trip together. It's gonna be okay. And for some reason, that nerve-wrackingness makes it better and more rewarding for me. I don't know why I'm like this, but I am. The harder something is, for a long time I ran until I was injured, and it's like the most hard physical thing to do, and it makes it better, and I don't know why. So that's how I kind of came to writing plays. I went to a junior college first, and with my best friend and her husband, who's also my best friend, and they're always my first readers, especially on my early work. I sent them my first play. It's called The Fantasy Club. You can't find it because it's in a drawer in my computer and it will never be shown to the world. But when they read it, they were like, oh, Rachel, it's so good. It's so funny. It was not a comedy. And I told them, it's a serious play. It's not funny. And they're like, no, Rachel, it's very funny. And so I said, fine. So I leaned in more to funny. I went out and found a bunch of playwriting groups. I don't know what is here, but in the Bay Area, we had groups where you can bring $10 and 10 pages, and they'd have a couple actors, and they'd read it, and you'd be with a bunch of other playwrights, and you'd hear your work out loud, which is super important, especially when you're just starting out, and then you would get feedback. The feedback was not as nice as what we had here, but you know, not everyone does feedback the same way. I will say I really appreciate Alchemy's stance on it. I agree that like positive feedback is the way to go, but so well done. But yeah, so I just start to bring 10 pages to these different community events. And when I had an actor who I felt like really got my stuff, I would go and say, hi, I'm Rachel. Thank you for being a reader tonight. Can I get your email? And I just would start to like build a little army of actors that I could come over, bribe with pizza, and like read my whole thing. And then I found more things. We had the Olympians Festival, San Francisco Olympians Festival, where every year they had different myths from Greek mythology that were up for adaptation, and you'd submit a proposal and they'd pick, you know, the best one, and they'd have like, it's like 2 weeks. And so there'd be 10 minutes, one acts, and full lengths. And so I started doing that, and you know, you have a year to write it, but then you have like a week to rehearse it, and maybe a week. You get a couple of rehearsals, and then you're up in front of people, and you get to hear the audience's reaction. And it was incredible. And while I was doing that, I joined a group called Playground in the Bay Area, which was very exciting. It's all about 10-minute plays. They call themselves the Playwright Incubator. They give you a topic on Friday. The following Sunday, your play is due. the next Friday, the 6 best of those plays are read at Berkeley Rep in front of audience. Sometimes we'd actually fill the house, which is incredible. So I started writing a lot, and I started to just like churn out the plays. Like I was one of the only people, I found out this later, but I talked to some of the other people in the playground writing pool, and I'd be like, how do you decide? Like, you have 3 days, so you've obviously written 3 plays. And then like, how do you know? And the other writers would look at me like, what are you talking about? No, we have not written more than 1 play. You are a type of person that is not like us, not like other people. So, but it was a great experience, and I learned a lot about writing and about myself. I know that as a writer, I need to write quite a lot in order to figure out my writing craft. When I think I was 11 when or maybe I was younger, my oldest sister gave me a journal, and it was really pretty. And it was so pretty that if I didn't write in it every day, I had a lot of guilt. Has anyone had those kind of journals?
Yes.
Yes. So I wrote in it every day, and I wouldn't think about what I wrote. I would just write. And every year, she's like, Rachel loves this journal. So she would buy me then another pretty journal. And so, I know. It's her fault that I'm like this. And then with the journaling, I also wrote just a ton of terrible poetry in high school. And I had no idea, but that was like an amazing entry point to write plays. So much of writing, not just plays, but writing in general, is like letting go of all the stuff that's floating around your head, the stuff that's like, don't forget you need to buy a vegetable for dinner, and remember my friend said something about my shirt and I didn't like that very much. And it's hard to like get past that and actually write the thing. And journaling, oddly enough, gave me like that ability to just like drop everything else and like get to it. So I'm writing in San Francisco. I'm in Playground. I'm doing a bunch of stuff with the San Francisco Olympians Festival. I get accepted into my first conference that's away from the Bay Area. I was in grad school at the time. And so I did the KCTCF, Kennedy Center American Theater College Festival. I can never do it if it's not spelled out. And so we went up, I went to a state or 2 up, I believe it was Washington State, for my first one, where they read one of my 10-minute plays. It was an amazing experience. I was with different grad students from across my region. I got to meet all these actual living writers who had feedback for my plays. And then I came home to my husband and our 2 small children, who were small at the time. And they're like, my husband's making pancakes and just like kind of softly crying. And he's like, we didn't have any close friends in the Bay Area. And I'm not sure, so we had kids in our early 20s. We would go to the park and everyone would be like, oh, you're the nanny, because I was so much younger than all the other parents. None of our friends had kids. None of our friends were even, like, our friends are now having kids that we were in the Bay Area with. So they were not in a place where they were ready to like help babysit or help around, anything like that. We didn't have any relatives. So he was really overwhelmed with like a weekend with these 2 toddlers. So I came home and he was like, okay, I support you. But if you're gonna do this and you're gonna leave me for weekends at a time, we have to move to family. And so that was either Salt Lake City, Utah, where he's from, or San Diego, California, where I'm from. And Salt Lake won because it's significantly cheaper. Yeah. So, and ever so slightly more central to the country. So like when I go places, it's a little bit easier. They have a more international airport than San Diego does too, which is also great. Whenever you don't have to connect a bunch of times, it's lovely. So when I moved to Salt Lake City, because remember, I like to do things a lot when I do things. I looked up all the artistic directors and literary managers, and I emailed them, and I said, hello, I'm Rachel Bublitz. I'm a new playwright. I'm moving to the area. I love new work. Can we get together for coffee or tea or whatever and talk about plays and theater and what you love? And a surprising number of them said yes. And then one of them, Jamie Wilcox, who's the artistic director of the Egyptian Youth Theater, when we were talking, I was like, so what are your limitations? What are you excited about? What are you always running into? And she's like, there's just not a lot of new work. that's exciting for young performers. And I was like, oh, I remember high school. I remember gender switching everything. I remember only doing Neil Simon and gender switching everything. And Neil Simon is great. I like Neil Simon, but it's just like, there's other things out there. She said, would you ever consider writing a play for young people? And I was like, I know young people. I love young people. That sounds great. Will you commission me? And she was like, absolutely. What's your idea? And I said, cheerleaders versus aliens. And she said, you got me with the title. Like, let's do this. And so it was my biggest cast that I've ever written in my at the time, it was 20 characters. I knew that it was super important to have a lot of female characters who are complex and interesting, and to have a lot of characters that were like not gender specific, so that you could just kind of throw anybody in there. I wanted to make it like as gender flexible as possible, so that anybody anywhere could do the play. Typically, we happen to have a lot of ladies who are in theater, so there's a lot of those rules out there for them. All the characters I named after female comedians that I love. So that was really fun to like go through and like write out a list and then like connect them with them. And because I had support from that theater, I got to, in my contract, I got to have a week-long workshop with Alicia Washington, who directed it. And we worked every day with the cast, and then I would rewrite at night, and then we'd work with the cast, and I'd rewrite. And then we did the world premiere about 7 or so months later. And it was a thrilling play to work on. It was such a joy. I think whenever I set out to write anything, whether it's for young performers or older performers, it's always like, what do I wish I'd had at that age? What plays do I wish I could have done? Because not only in high school were we doing all the Neil Simon, when I got to college, all of the scenes had to be like from August Wilson, Arthur Miller, and there was like 4 other male playwrights, and then we got what's her name? The Children's Hour. Lillian Hellman. We got Lillian Hellman. So it was like, okay, are we doing Lillian Hellman or are we gender swapping? Because it's like, there's not a lot of, all the people in my class, it was 75% young ladies, and your scene partner is often going to be a lady. And gender swapping is fun and great, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also fun to write a part that was written for you. And so up until that point, I'd written things that I'd wish I'd done, and I continue to do that as well. So that's how Cheerleaders came about. I just kind of suggested it to an artistic director after knowing them for 1 hour. Thankfully, she's now one of my closest friends, so it was great. And then we just kind of kept building on that. That was also my first published play, my first full-length published play. I had some shorter things published. Publishing is a whole other weird can of worms where you have to be published before most publishers will consider you. So they'll say, you have to be published, and you're like, okay, like where's the thing to jump into in order to do that? And it turns out that like youth theater kind of is that in, because there's so few playwrights writing for young performers, and so many publishers are looking for exciting new works in that category, that like if you have something, they'll take it even if you don't have the backing of an agent or other publishers behind you. So that was kind of my in for publishing, was I was like, oh, but I'm writing for youth, and that's how Cheerleaders got published. I was actually, one of the people I wrote with in Playground reached out to me recently. I think I have about 10 full lengths published now, and he was trying to get something published, and he's like, list all your titles, and he's like, oh, don't list your titles for children, just list your titles for adults, that's all that matters. And I'm like, excuse you. Like, I get the same royalty percentage for my kids' plays as I do my adult plays, and like young performers are just as deserving of exciting new works as adults. And I think a lot of people don't do this. You can like give challenging things to people of all ages. And I think that's one of the things that's really lacking in a lot of the youth plays that I read is it's like they can take on more, they can do more. They're humans. I'm lucky to have 2 amazing kids who surprise me every day. with how much they can, like there's a lot going on in the world. These kids got it. They know what's up. So I think one of the keys for me to have 10 plays published is like, what am I interested in, that circle, and like what is missing in theater, and that's the other circle, and like where things overlap is like your sweet spot of like, that's where you write because that's where there's opportunity. So it's plays for young people and plays with roles for women, young women, old women, women of all ages. So that's kind of where I focus on. My next commission from the Egyptian was The Night Witches, which it was mentioned earlier. It had a sold-out run at the Lake Fringe Festival. It's now been produced over 50 times. It just had its 50th production in 2024. Yeah, produced in Ireland and in Australia. It's been produced in Canada and all over the country. It's very, very cool. After that play, I submitted it to like 4 or 5 different publishers, and I got 4 yeses. And then I had to negotiate, which I was not good at, but I was mostly like, okay, they have offered me this, and just said nothing else. Like, and then they would offer me more, and then I'd go to the other 3 and be like, they have offered me this, and then I'd get an answer back, and just kept like going back and forth until I was like, okay, I have to make a decision. My daughter, who must have been 11 or 12 at the time, she likes to think of herself as my agent or manager, I'm not sure which, but she kind of made the final call, and she was like, okay, you're gonna go with these people because it's a little bigger audience than you're used to, and it's a good way to get to know them, and they won't be mad. The other people won't be mad. You'll be fine. And so I think I made the right choice. It's with Dramatic Publishing, and it's very exciting. But I said no to Stage Partners, because Stage Partners wanted it. But they immediately were like, we really like your writing. We really like your handling of a historical play. Can we commission you? And I said, sure, let's talk. And they said, okay, there are these women who during the Depression delivered books on horseback during the Great Depression, and they were called the Bookwomen. And I was like, you had me at Bookwomen. Like, where do I sign my name? This sounds amazing. And I think it might be one of my favorite plays for sure, but it's also one of my, like, I had to be the most careful with that play, I felt, as a writer. With Cheerleaders versus Aliens, I felt like I could be any of those girls. I could have been one of those aliens. I'd never been to Kentucky. I still actually have never been to Kentucky. I know that I feel like often the way that part of the world is depicted in media is like not favorable or great, and I didn't want to like add to that. Thankfully, Kentucky is amazing in that they have a oral library that's available online. And so I got to listen to people talk from the 1920s and 30s from Kentucky, from like the county that I was setting the play in. So I could like hear a variety of people kind of get their cadence, kind of get a feel, and go into the play not thinking that I was gonna like abuse a group or a region of the country that I'd never even been to yet. And so I'm always very excited when the Bookwoman is done. I was really excited that it was done here. I think it's the closest to where it actually happened that it's been produced yet. And the care that everyone here showed to that play was super obvious, even to me in Utah, which is amazing. Yeah. So since the Bookwoman, I've been commissioned more time. Let's see. It's hard because there's secrets. I have an adaptation. I have an adaptation of a play that they commissioned that I'm not allowed to say what it is yet, but that's going to be really fun. I can tell you when the camera's off. I just wrote for the University of Utah. Just commissioned me to write a sports play. Oh. Yes, I'm very excited. It's about water polo. It's like my thing. What's the hardest thing you could do on stage? It might be water polo. So the first draft is written. We did a staged reading of it, and we're gonna further development. It might not be done by the University of Utah. It might be done by some students at the University of Utah next year, but hopefully that'll happen. I have some other fun plays that I'm really excited about working with. The Egyptian Youth Theatre has another commission that they're hoping to get from me in the next year or two. And so, I'm just moving and grooving on writing, publishing, and getting my plays published or produced. I'd like to get things published, one, because it's really pretty to have a nice little book. I can't get over that. It's like, it's a book and it has my words in it and it's great. But the best part is that they handle the contracts for my productions, which I never want. I hate writing contracts. I hate reading contracts. They handle all of that, so that's lovely. So looking forward, I hope to work with Alchemy again soon. This has been a joy to come out here, to get to know the people here at this theater, but also like the town in general. I walked around Huntington as much as I could today, slipping and sliding. I went and looked down at the river. I guess I was looking at Ohio. I had no idea. You get to Ohio. I'm from states that are so big. Like in California, if you drive up California, that's like days of your life. You are on the road for days before you get to Oregon. You can go over to Arizona and that's a lot quicker, but still. I feel like Utah's bigger than states over here. Anyway. It's very exciting that I could be in Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky all within like 30 minutes. That's 15? All three? Congratulations. Well done. That's like geography. You're going places. You're like checking boxes. I think that is mostly what I planned to talk about, but I also thought there might be questions. I think that's a good time to turn it over if anybody has questions about the bookwomen or cheerleaders or being a playwright in general. Yeah.
So, I'm a retired pastor, so every sermon starts with a blank page. Do you find, like, this was kind of the joy of that, was I would start writing not really knowing where I was going, and somehow just the process came to fruition. Does that same kind of thing go in playwriting?
So I know a lot of playwrights who just start writing and a beautifully crafted, well-developed circle of a play happens. Absolutely. That is not my process at all. At all. When I first started writing, I'd do that and it would be funny. Not much would happen. Or if stuff happened, it'd be funny, stuff would happen, but it didn't mean anything. I wasn't saying anything about the world, or I wasn't doing anything. I've learned that for me as a writer, I really have to have a plan. I often throw my plans out. I usually outline and then get halfway, and then an actor or a character wants to go this way, where I'd had them go, and I follow them and rewrite my outline. But yeah, I have to have a plan, otherwise a whole lot of nothing happens.
This is sort of related. So it sounds like you get a lot of commissions from places to write shows, and so Bookwoman, that was suggested by the commissioner, right? So
yeah.
We would like you to write a show about this specific thing. Does that happen a lot, or is it usually just write a show? We're commissioning a show and write it, and we're gonna love it. Like how? Yeah,
it's kind of both. So with Stage Partners, the publisher who commissioned the Bookwoman and a new project that I'm working on, it's very specific. It's like, we want you to write this, and then I go. At the Egyptian Youth Theatre, it's always been me pitching something, and that can change and morph as I go, but it's always my idea. I'm trying to think, I think in 2023, I was commissioned to write a play about retrovirology. They're having a commission about retroviruses at the University of Utah, and they wanted me to write a play about it. Oh yeah, it was a lot, because the person who was commissioning me was not a theater person, it was a science person, and so he was trying to teach me what retroviruses are, and that didn't go well. I mean, I can tell you a few things, but it's still a concept that is like, retroviruses are wild. Let me tell you. It's like, we didn't have a placenta until a retrovirus. Like, they changed mammals. Okay. Anyway, that was a commission that it was super open, but also very specific. Like, they're like, we don't know how retroviruses are a play, but make it a play, which is hard. And I only had a certain amount of time, and then everything kept changing. So that was one that actually didn't work out. It was my first one that, like, I wrote it, and they're like, oh, this is great. And then we did a reading of it. Oh, this is great. And then they were like, you know what? We've decided we'd like it to be absurd and, like, talk about the people, you know, not being able to have placentas until this retrovirus. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This thing's happening in a couple weeks. Like, absurdism is hard to do, and not, like, without a lot of headspace. And so I said, look, I gave you the play, and they held up their head of the bargain, but they ended up having someone else write something for the performance.
Can I ask, I don't want to monopolize, but a slight follow-up, just since it's the same topic, is, so when you're coming up with your own ideas, do they just come to you? How do you sort of, is there a process to think up ideas? Do you just think of it and write it down? I mean,
So I have a couple different ways. I'm a huge believer in lists. I will list all day, and sometimes it's like I need to get to 100 items on this list, or sometimes it's I have 10 minutes and I can't stop my pen until it's the timer goes off. I think when you look at the blank page, as you're saying, there's like a million options, and it's all about, like, you know, hacking away at some of those options and giving yourselves parameters. And a lot of our brain is filled with, like, don't forget to change the laundry when it is ready to change in 40 minutes, or did you remember to feed the dog, or, you know, like, you have to wash your kid every other day. My kids swam, so they didn't need as many baths. And so you sit down, and all these things just they still don't wash their hair. My son has, like, chlorine bleached hair. It's amazing. Anyways, so when you sit down to write and there's, like, all these things, it gets overwhelming. And so if I want to write a new play, if I've been commissioned, or if I know that I'm going to have a meeting with Jamie about what I'm going to write next, I'll sit down and say, okay, 100 ideas. 98 of those are bad. And I have to give myself permission and space to have a lot of bad ideas. My computer is filled with plays that will never see the light of day because they looked like they were good ideas. I wrote them, I realized they're never going to work, and I just get shoved in a random folder that I hope no one ever finds. I'm going to have to delete it one day. Because I think, I know, I have that feeling too, but I also think that if I die, and my kids could make money from them, they will. In fact, I know my daughter will. And I just don't want that stuff out there. And so I'll write lists, and then I'll figure out, like, okay, this is the most exciting, this is the best one. Or sometimes they just come to me. I've been trying to write a Christmas play for a really long time. And so for, like, years, my head has been thinking of Christmas ideas, and I recently got one and I was like, oh wow, that's ridiculous, and I want to write that. But it took my brain a really long time. Like, I think my brain at least needs a lot of space to go through all the options. So it's kind of both. If it's like I'm in a crunch, like when I was writing with Playground and I needed to write a play in 3 days, I did a lot of lists, and then I would pick the 3 best ideas that came out of that and write those 3. And then just see, like, what direction those went. But then in the back of all this, so when I'm done with this journal or notebook, I'll start another one. And in the very back page is where I put ideas. So no matter where I'm at in the book, even if I'm in the middle, I always put them in the back. So if it's like, oh, I have time to start something new, I go there. And I'm like, what did I think of at 4 a.m. that I luckily remembered at 10 a.m. so that I could write it in my journal the next day. When I'm exercising, I get a lot of ideas. I think exercising, like, makes your brain go other places, especially if you're, like, not listening to a podcast or a book on tape. Your brain just kind of gets to wander as your body's doing something really hard. So I think of ideas then a lot. And it's just like finding a system to keep track of them, and then, like, finding a system that works for you, that you can access new ideas when you need them. Yes. You.
I like that you said absurdism is really hard.
It's so hard.
I'm trying to write a absurdist comedy. How do you go about, like, adapting an idea that's completely ridiculous and it looks good in your head, or like funny, but you have to work with the constraints of being in a theater. It's a stage play.
Yeah. Right. So I think anytime you're trying to go from the thing that you see in your brain to the thing that you see on stage, I think one of the biggest things that holds us back is like if you go to a museum and you see a painting, you see this like perfect, beautiful, magical work. This is a masterpiece. Most of the museums are filled with masterpieces. What you don't see is the 5 years that artists spent trying to draw a perfect circle. You don't see how many drafts went into this, how many versions of this will never see the light of day, how many sketches that they did, how much hours they did practicing. And I think something that holds me back, and I have to constantly remind myself, is like first drafts are supposed to be bad. They are supposed to be bad. We cannot have a finished draft unless we have a bad first draft. So something that I have to constantly tell myself when I'm sitting down to write a brand new play and it's like all these things in my head look amazing. It's like tap dancing and everyone's wearing sequins and it's perfect, and then I draw it and it's like stick figures, is that like I can't go, it doesn't come with tap dancing and sequins. You have to like build up to it. And I would say making things work for the stage is like one of the best things about being a creator in theater is that we collaborate. And we have smarter people than us that come in with their ideas, right? So like in Cheerleaders versus Aliens, it's like glitter, smoke, poof. That's like the stage directions for most of the fight scene between the aliens and the cheerleaders, right? Because I was like, not my problem. Lasers, you guys got that? Lasers. Bam, and someone figured it out, and I hear that you guys had an amazing fight choreographer and you figured it out. So, and I also think there's like a lot of things that can be figured out on stage. When I wrote The Night Witches, they fly in a plane. It's about women during World War II who flew for Russia, who bombed the Nazis every night in very badly made planes. And so I'm writing the first draft, and I'm like, they're gonna have to take off any minute now. How are they gonna do that? We're gonna be at a fringe festival. We have 2 benches and like as little props as possible. And so I'm sitting there and I'm writing, and I'm like, the other characters become the plane. They make the noises, they make all the stuff, they are the plane. And it's, now that I've seen it done, it is the most beautiful part of the play. And like you with your play, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's a metaphor because they're lifting each other up. And I'm like, yeah. That was so on purpose. I am so smart. But so yeah, like I have one play that's absurd, and it didn't just happen. You have to like get in a room with people. You have to like let that bad first draft happen. You have to let yourself rewrite. I have plays that I've rewritten like 10 to 20 times. When you watch a movie, that's not the first draft of that script. So give yourself space, let it be bad. Like if I could tell any writer, any artist, just like let the first thing be bad. That's fine. You have time.
It's hard writing jokes for absurdism like that. People can't really relate to because it's not real, but that's part of it,
Right. I mean, I would just say write it and let it be what it is, and then later you have like rewriting's like the jam. That's where it's like, oh, I get to now shape this, mold that kind of looks like a ball, and I get to shape it, I get to shave a little here, I get to make it what it is. I wouldn't worry about absurdism or any of that first. I would just let it be what it is and then fix it later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more.
There's one more?
Yeah.
Okay, one more. You had
Do you have favorite characters from either of the 2 that we've done, like from Cheerleaders or from Bookwomen?
Cheerleaders is probably Gilda, for sure. My mom flew out for the world premiere, and she was like, Rachel, that's you. When you were younger, and I was like, I was not like Gilda. And my sister was like, oh my gosh, she totally was. But I love Gilda. I love that she never gets things, and she's just like, no, this is, you don't want to be auditioning here. These are bad people. Just come on. It's not a good thing. And then for The book women, probably Irma. I said this last night as well, but like there's so much care into like some characters because you're like, they're gonna hold the story, it's what the arc is all around. And then sometimes the characters that are slightly more on the side just happen. They just come out and they're fully formed. Irma was one of those that I didn't have to think about once. She just came out that way. She's amazing. And she made my job as a writer significantly easier. So I think those two are my favorite from those.
You're gonna be eating so many marshmallows. You did that.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
I can't stand them.
Oh my gosh. I have so much guilt. They could have been many. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for being a part of Alchemy's New Works Festival 2025. Thank you for doing this. We truly appreciate it. We are going to set up for the last 3 short plays.
Yeah, like a quick break, like a real quick break. If you need something, make it happen now.
So grab the cocktails while you can. Let's hear it once again for Rachel Bublitz.
Yay! Thank you.